Hello everyone, my name is Dorian and welcome to Silverstone. We are with the F3 and I'm just going to show you guys a lap real quick and then we're going to go over it corner by corner. I've also made a setup, it's in my Discord, link for that in the description below. Now Silverstone, not exactly my home track. In pretty much any other car I absolutely hate it, but with this car it's sort of clicked. I'm really enjoying practicing here right now. Maybe even convince myself to go back to F3 officials, even though I had a terrible experience recently, so we'll see how that goes. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and if you want to see more track guides and race videos, then subscribe to the channel. See you guys on the track. Okay, so we're coming up to turn number 1. Now, the first thing before we go over it, just know that on lap 1, 2, maybe even 3, you cannot go flat out here. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going to have to lift a little bit on both turn 1 and turn 2. A little bit of a lift to around 50% will cost you about a tenth and a half on both corners. But if you do that, you'll survive the initial part of the race, so you might as well do that. Gonna start to turn in very slowly right at the 100. As you can see, I'm starting to turn in the wheel. Probably not recommended to use as much of the curb as I have. You can see it's a bit bumpy. You shouldn't have to do that with warm tires. I was just, experimenting a little bit, trying to see if I can carry a little bit more speed. Clipping this curb nicely. Being very, very gentle with the wheels, you can see. I'm not trying to do anything abrupt. Be as smooth as possible. Gonna take me to around the middle of the road, slightly to the left of the middle. You don't want to be all the way to the outside here because you want to stay tight throughout the left-hander here, throughout turn 2. So I'm gonna take the car to the left and just be as tight as possible. Now, again, you cannot do that on cold tires. The car is gonna want to kick out and just oversteer, and it's gonna snap, but you're not gonna have a chance to catch it. So you need to let the car run wide here for the first couple laps, even when you're lifting. So keep that in mind. Once the car is nice and warm and everything's up to temps, then yeah, definitely keep it tight through here and stay on the left for a shorter route and to line yourself up correctly for the braking point here. I'm gonna start braking right as this curb kind of starts, or maybe slightly past the green stuff a little bit. You'll see it here, right around here, around 60% peak. I'm trying to manage my front tire temps, throughout this section of corners. So right-hander, left-hander coming up, you're gonna need a lot from the front tires. So you cannot brake too hard here. You definitely don't want to lock up, but even peaking too high here will cause some understeer on entry here and will kind of ruin your segment. So peaking to around 60%, pretty quickly I'm releasing it, downshifting now into third and now into second. As I do, trail braking all the way into the curb. and even staying on the brakes just a tiny bit when I mount the curb, right around here, just making sure the car is nice and tight. And from this point on, I'm going to start accelerating out again to around 50%. Keep it on around 50%, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, until you can open up the wheel. You don't want to go all the way to the outside here. You don't want to be to any extreme, really. You want to be sort of in the middle. And as I open up the wheel, squeezing it gently back to 100%. Taking the car slightly to the right, just to open up this corner a little bit more. You don't want to go all the way. There's not a lot of rubber here, it seems. And I'm going to start braking. Obviously, I'm already looking at this curb here, trying to find the apex. But if you want an indication, right as the you can see the tip of the curb here as it merges with the grass, that's sort of our braking point. Very shallow peak, around 30%. And again, stay in second gear for now. And I'm gonna downshift into first just now as I start to trail brake into the curb. First gear really helps the initial rotation here. On cold tires, it could snap. So just be gentle with the brakes. Don't be too abrupt with the wheel, and you'll be fine. And as soon as I mount this curve, I'm going to start accelerating. But the way I accelerate is quite different than usual. So as soon as I start accelerating, I'm going to short shift into second, because I want to gradually shift the weight to the rear tires and not upset them, to have good amount of grip on the exit. So pretty early apex, pretty early on the power, because this corner is really open. You can take advantage of that. Still 50%, opening up the wheel gradually and going back to 100. You can see how much runoff I have here. So it's very easy for me to stay within the boundaries of the track. And I'm going to be very smooth, just slowly rotating the car to the left here, clipping this curb nicely, not trying to be too abrupt, carrying the speed, even using this curb a little bit on the way out, even though you definitely don't have to. And we just survived the first sector. That wasn't easy. It was hard for me to figure it out. Now we're gonna brake right at the 50, using this curb under braking to maximize our approach. Start braking right around here, and I'm gonna peak it around 50%. Downshift all the way into third. Not too quickly though. Just let the car rotate. It's gonna want to over rotate under braking here. Not a lot you can do about it. If you want to take this corner quickly, it's gonna slide out on the entry. Definitely tricky on the first couple of laps. Just brake a little bit earlier. Let's say 55. And as you can see, I got a straight wheel, a little bit of trail braking, and the car is turning hard left. So it's definitely sliding a little bit. And but the downforce is still very effective. So it's gonna sink the rear tires in, and I'm gonna trust the car to just stabilize itself. Not doing anything too abrupt with the wheel to correct it. And trail braking all the way into this curb. I want to mount it quite a lot. I want to cut it nicely. And about halfway through it, I'm going to start accelerating back out again. Now, usually I would say try to compromise on the corner entry here, or on the corner exit here, so you can open up the following corner. But I figured out a way that you won't have to do that, because it seems like if you try to compromise here, you lose too much time. So instead of trying to have a wide approach for the right-hander coming up, I'm doing something a little bit different. It's probably the more correct way to do it. So as you can see, I'm accelerating back out to around 70-80%, squeezing it nicely, staying on for a little bit. Again, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, waiting on it before I go back to 100%. And I'm taking the car almost all the way to the right here. You want to try to open up as much as you can. This much is great. I mean, sometimes you'll end up with a wheel on the curb here, and that's kind of a bummer. It's going to compromise your entry speed a little bit, but it's still manageable, because what I'm doing here, instead of going for a late entry and a wide approach, I'm going for a double apex approach. Sorry. I'm going for a double apex approach, which means I'm accelerating hard still at this point, even though it seems like I want to stay on the inside. I'm going to go for the inside just for a little bit and let the car run wide. I'm trail braking just to keep the front end in check, but the car is going wide, so I clip the first apex, imaginary apex, and I'm shutting in the wheel, trying to rotate the car, and going back to the power around halfway through it, I would say. 50%, staying on it. See, accelerate. I was a little bit greedy. You should probably stay on 50%. You'll see why in a second. So I should have stayed to around 50%. I squeezed it to around 65. And because of that, I mount this curb here. Now, the reason I mount this curb is because it's going to rotate the car. If you're off this curb, you're going to experience some understeer on the exit. So the curb really helps with that, but you really have to be gentle with the throttle. Because I went to around 65%, you can see what I had to do here with the wheel. Right before I wanted to accelerate. So usually at this point, I want to smack it. I want to go flat out to 100% throttle, but because I had to catch it, I had to delay it a little bit. That probably cost me about half a tenth, maybe a tenth. So I had to catch it and close it again, going back to 100%. Let the car run wide. Use all of this curb if you have to, and you're through. Taking the car nice and gentle to the right here, and even clipping this part quite a lot. There's no off track, so why not take a shorter route, save some time. And probably the most fun you can have on this track is this corner, specifically with this car. It's just so much fun. So I'm gonna start braking. If we have the 100 here and we have the 50, I would say smack dab in the middle. We're not braking, we're turning in. So we're gonna start to turn in flat out and only lift as we get sort of close to this 50. Obviously you're not looking there, but just as an indication, I'm gonna lift nice and gradually. I'm not gonna be abrupt with my lift because the car has a tendency to rotate quite nicely already. I don't need too much oversteer on entry here because I don't want to catch the car. I just want to rotate perfectly to an early apex. You can see I'm aiming for a very early apex here, lifting to around 5%. And as I go back to the curb, I go back to the power. And squeezing it all the way to 100%. You don't want to be too abrupt because you don't want to create too much understeer on the way out. But you can take it all the way to 100% quite early. That was just a precaution. I took it to around 95%. I could have stayed flat. Didn't make a cent of difference. Opening up the wheel nice and gradually. Using the curb on the way out. Definitely count on this curb. You can use quite a lot of it, as you can see, without getting off track. I think a little bit more than that would be an off track though. So don't be too ambitious with it, let's say, when you're especially when you're qualifying. Now, Maggots and Becketts. Now, from this point on, I'm thinking about the exit. So from this point on, all I'm doing is setting up the car and making small compromises. So we have the left-hander, right-hander, left-hander, and another right-hander at the exit. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about that final right-hander and the best line possible for it, so I can line the car up, because there's a huge straight after that, and you need a good exit. So from this point on, I'm just making small compromises. I'm not taking the car all the way to the left. I'm just staying right in the middle of the road, taking the car to the curb here, and start to rotate very early into this curb and kite it quite a lot. There's no off track, so why not? And I'm gonna start lifting. Now the reason I'm lifting here is because I don't want a car to wash out to the outside too much, and that's a vital point here. Lifting to around 60% and then going back, squeezing back to 100%. As you can see, the car's rotating very nicely here. I'm not getting washed out. I'm smack dab in the middle of the road with a straight wheel, which is exactly where I want to be, because the car is nice and neutral at this point. And that's a great point in time to ask for a lot of turn in into the left-hander here. I'm still in 6th gear, mind you. I'm not downshifting, not braking. Only now, as I start to turn in the car, I'm gonna lift, dab of the brakes. You can see, you'll notice how gentle my brakes are throughout this sector. Dab of the brakes, downshift into 5th. Just now, so quite late. I'm trying to carry as much speed as I can without missing this curb. It's really vital that you clip this curb nicely. You just don't want to do it too early. That's why I was late on the downshift, because I want that rotation to occur late. Just slight trail braking, rotating the car, and putting as much of it as I can, about, I would say, 2/3 of it, right on this curb. As you can see, I'm already neutral right at this point. Let go of the brakes. A little bit of throttle to maintain some stability. Again, just shifting some weight to the rears, making sure the car is nice and stable. And open up the wheel. As you can see, this corner is quite open now. This is exactly where you want to be every time. If you find yourself washing out here, you're overcooking the previous corners. You have to be on the left here, get a good run here, and that's going to give you a lot of time, just a ton of time. Dab of the brakes, nothing serious, just a little bit of weight on the fronts as I try to rotate the car for the final time. You don't want a Scandinavian flick here. So you can see I'm making sure that the car is straight before I start braking, putting a little bit of weight on the rears so it won't start sliding out when I change directions. Trail braking all the way into the curb, or not all the way into the curb actually. I'm trying to point and shoot here. So we have the AstroTurf that meets the curb right here. We're gonna get close to it in a sec. This is my apex. This is how early it is and how vital it is to hit it. Because as you do, and you mount the car on the curb, you're gonna get a lot of rotation. So I'm gonna squeeze the throttle all the way to 100%. Look at how much of the car. I'm not even on the road at this point. I'm beyond the white line with my left tire. And that's gonna give me all the speed in the world for the exit here. I'm just flat out, fully committed, letting the car run wide. Barely any understeer. The car's rotating nicely. And I'm using this curb on the way out, not a problem. Even hugging it, take a shorter route, taking the car to the middle of the road. You don't have to go all the way to the outside, and you're through. There's a ton of time there. Practice it, practice it, practice it. Now, this is the weirdest corner that I've ever seen. Basically, as we all know, if you want a good exit, you got to brake early. This corner is the opposite, and that's what I had to learn here today. So basically, you want to brake as late as possible without completely missing the corner, of course, so you can have a good exit. And the reason being is because it really shuts in on you. It's like on the exit, so it continues to curb around even on the exit. Doesn't straighten out. So you want as late of an entry as possible without losing all your speed. So you just need to brake late and turn in late. Now, the way I do that is I'm going to start braking right around here as the AstroTurf meets the curb, right at the end here, I would say. And maybe even past it, just a little bit past it. So right in the beginning of the black and white curb, right around here is when I'm going to start braking. It's vital that you memorize the braking point here because there's a ton of time in it. I'm going to downshift from 6th into 5th. I'm not going to go into 4th gear. I'm going to carry as much speed as I can. Peaking very slight peak to around, let's say, 40%. Releasing it as I downshift just now into 5th. As you can see how open this corner is. I'm not trying to turn in too early at all. I'm just trail braking all the way into the curb. Did something weird here. I can't remember doing it. I went fully neutral, and then I started dabbing the throttle just a little bit. And then I got spooked. And then I started hitting the brakes just a little bit. Let's call it modulation to sound professional. But you probably don't want to let go of the brakes. You don't want to let go of the throttle once you committed to it. So, try to stay on the brakes until you hit the throttle again. But that was the fastest I've ever done this corner. So it was definitely good enough. Now, as I mount this curb or as I get close to it, I'm going to accelerate back out again quite aggressively to around 60-70%. And then squeezing it all the way back to 100. As you mount this curb, you're going to get a ton of rotation in 5th gear. So you're not going to be worried about the exit as much. I can actually turn the car even harder if I need to right now. You can see I'm making small corrections. I got plenty of turn in. And I'm going to take the car to the outside. About as much as you want to cut it, really. There's a nasty off track here that's going to ruin a lot of your qualifying laps. Practice this corner a lot. And a little bit more than that would even give you a penalty. So you got to keep that in mind. Now, staying in 5th gear throughout here because we're going to brake downhill. There's a little downhill section here under braking. So you need that engine brake to help you. So you're going to stay on the limiter a little bit. It's not a big deal. It's not going to really cost you any time. And you're going to gain it all back very quickly on the brakes anyways. So we're going to brake right at the 100, or maybe slightly before it. Let's say the 105. Yeah, something like that. And I'm not going to peak very high. I'm trying to... Now, before we go into this corner... Your rear tires are really boiling hot right now from the previous corner. It's such a rear intensive corner that you had a ton of weight on it. You accelerate throughout, and because of that, and the fact that you only had a very short straight before you have to turn in again, the rear tires are gonna want to give up on you on entry here. So you want to keep that in mind. I'll show you what I'm doing to prevent that. I'm not peaking very high to around 60% and just staying on it for a little while. Not releasing it too quickly, just down into 50% at this point. At the end of this curb on the right, I'm going to start to turn in. Obviously, you're not looking at it, just as an indication. And downshifting into 2nd. Trail braking into the corner, all the way into the apex. And as I reach the apex, I'm going to start accelerating back out again. And even though can technically, if I had, you know, decent temperatures on the tires, I would have been able to be much more aggressive. I have to mitigate that and just be very gentle to around 40% and just stay on it. Just be patient. Let the wheel open up. Let the car straighten out. Let the rear wheels know that you're going to ask for a lot, because it's a very rear intensive exit as well. And only now I'm going to start accelerating back to 100%, upshifting into third, and lifting again on entry, because you will spin out if you don't. You're going to have to lift here every time. I don't know, maybe there are setups with a ton of downforce that you won't have to do that, but you will burn up the rears if you don't, so it's not going to be consistent. You're going to have to lift here every time. Be as close to this sausage curb as you can without mounting it. And slowly, gradually accelerating back out again as I open up the wheel. Try to use all of the road here. Take the car all the way to the left. Again, be as close to the sausage curb. It was a bit slidey. As you can see, the rears are so hot I had to catch it, even though I was pretty gentle with it. So just as an indication to how hot the rear tires are right now. And nice and easy all the way to the inside here. And that will give us a 152 to 1-2. I hope you guys enjoyed this track guide. I really enjoyed learning this track with this car, because Silverstone is not exactly my home track. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, and if you want to see more track guides and race videos and other tutorials as well, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.